before we get into like players, because I want to talk about some specific players too, Jesse. How can I call you Doc? Or call you Doc?
Whatever you want. Whatever you want.
I want to call you Doc.
Jesse's fine.
Like this
whatever you want.
So before we get into the players, is there any way that like people can get this kind of information? Is it they have to follow you? Do they need to download something?
Easiest way. So there's two places. I'm predominantly only on Twitter. I mean, I had the other ones, but I don't really use them. So I do most of my content on Twitter. And videos are going to be on YouTube and TikTok under the Fantasy Doctors. It's usually DRS, not the full word. And then this is my third or maybe fourth year now. I've done what we call an injury draft guide, which it was exactly what it sounds like. This year, I went even crazier than I have in the past, and I stacked a combination of statistics and analytics as well as injuries. So you're getting all the PFF data, the player profile data, the reception perception. You get all of that analytics. So what does the data show for how good this player is, stripping them of their name? What does the data show? And then add the injury element. This guy's risky. This guy's coming off that injury. This is what the data shows for that. And then I go deep dive into basically each major injury, your Achilles, your ACLs, your Jones, your Liz Franks. And then I give you individual player profiles for the main guys, which we're going to talk about in a sec. And I even do a deep analysis for every rookie, pretty much every major relevant rookie. I don't think I did the 7th rounders, but so I last year, a year ago, about this time, I went extra crazy. I took every single quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end that were relevant. I think 450 of them. And I went back to as far as I could go and documented each of their injury histories by hand, personally.
Woo!
So I have injuries from Devontae Adams' Pop Warner days.
Holy smoke. That you got to be like the only person that has that.
There's one other one, but it's not as accurate. Because I know what mine show and I know what theirs shows. So it's not, I mean, sometimes they have stuff that I can't find, but if it's on the internet, there's a good chance it's on there. That one is pretty much free on the fantasydoctors.com. But it really shows you like, hey, what happened if I found the surgeon's name? I will write it. I speculate like what I think it was if they didn't comment on it, but just based on what the information showing. And then I write the number of games missed. And you start to see a trend. Like, you want to see a crazy one? Look at Matthew Stafford's. You want to see another crazy one? Look at Julio Jones. There are 60 pages long, 60 profiles long.
Oh, my
60
God.
Injuries. That's what we know of. Not the ones we don't know of. Those are just the ones we know of.
Yeah. Yo, make sure you guys if you're watching this, I lost my headphones doing that. If you guys are watching this, make sure you take advantage of that. Go to fantasydoctors.com, download the draft guide, get whatever you can out of that. I'm about to take advantage of that myself. I'm not going to lie to you, man. Let's get in some players, though. Obviously, that's what people want to watch. They want to hear about their guys, their fantasy team. Their drafts are coming up. We're about to hit training camp. They want to talk about the players. One of the hottest players, I would say, in drafts right now is Tony Pollard. I would say he's probably a very divisive name. Dallas fans love him. He's expected to take on a huge role. We've seen his ADP skyrocket here over the last month or so. How are you feeling about Tony Pollard? Because from what I know, I'm going to give you – every time I talk, I'm going to give you probably some kindergarten knowledge of the injury, right? So broken fibula, fractured fibula, broken leg. Talk to us about Tony Pollard, where he's at right now, and what we can expect.
So put your hand on the outside of your ankle and feel that thin bone that runs all the way to the ankle. That's the fibula.
Okay.
The cool thing about the fibula is it's only responsible for 15% of the body weight on that side. So it's not overly important. It makes up the ankle joint. That's pretty much the only reason it's important. But it also has the high ankle ligament attached to it. So that's the other reason it's important. He fractured that, which is not particularly concerning. But he also had the high ankle. And the fracture with the high ankle made it what we call unstable. And then as a result, he had to have surgery. We haven't had clarity on the surgery because initially we heard, hey, he waited 3 weeks and then he had surgery, which would likely mean that he waited the fibula fracture healed and then he underwent surgery for the ankle or vice versa. Usually it would be the high ankle that was repaired, though. But then we heard he went to surgery 2 days later. So then I'm like, well, are they going to go in, not repair his fibula, just put hardware in the high ankle? Either way, it doesn't really matter. He's fine. I'm not worried about him at all, really at all. He should be just about 100% by now, by about 6 months, which is pretty much where we are right now. And he's not really at any increased injury risk because this should not have affected the joint, which is what Jonathan Taylor's was. And he did not have any ligament damage, which is the difference between him and Rashad Penny's injury, which was what makes Rashad Penny's injury much worse. Almost identical injuries, but Rashad Penny's also had the same ligament that Michael Thomas tore a couple of years ago, the one that really derailed him, which is this. If you look on the inside of your ankle, which is this part, which you never injure, that's what he tore. It's called a deltoid ligament. That is a bad injury, and that's why I have some concerns about Penny, even though the guy is unbelievably filled with injuries. Freak. I mean, we know that he runs the show in terms of yards per carry and all the crazy stats. But I'm curious to see how he's going to do. But Pollard, I have him as a top 3 back. I think there's a realm of possibility he can finish as the RB1 if he gets enough volume.
Now, are the Cowboys going to look at that in a certain light, right? Because here's how I see it. I'm like, Tony Pollard, he doesn't have the BMI that we like to see for backs to stay healthy for a long period of time. He's on the smaller end, I would say, of the spectrum. Yep. So normally I tend to avoid backs like that get a full workload, especially coming off an injury, for that reason. Now, I probably sound crazy because I sound like the guy who doesn't know what I'm talking about, obviously hearing that come out of your mouth. But what would you say to the person that is me that's like, you know what? He's a smaller back. If he gets a full workload, I have concerns that he's going to get re-injured again.
I mean, I get it. Thankfully, his injury history is really small. So when I wrote up the draft guide, I broke it down by player section, and then I eventually just did its own medicine section. For the running back section, I went crazy deep dive, and I figured out, hey, why are the top 10 finishing as the top 10? And I did it for every year for the past 5 and then 10 years. And you start to see patterns. And the NFL has evolved and changed. We no longer are running as much as we used to. You remember back when DeMarco Murray was running for 450, I think he had 450 carries one year, which is bananas. Now you're starting to see guys get a lot of targets. So Jonathan Taylor, when he finished number 1 2 years ago, was an anomaly because he only caught like 30 passes or 30-something passes. Almost every top 5 back catches at least 40 passes and rushes the ball at least 250 times. So when you look for that threshold, that criteria, there's not many guys that meet it. I mean, there's like 10, maybe 12. Right. So Pollard without Zeke or without another big bell cow behind him should hit that threshold. You got him. Jonathan Taylor indirectly fits there. Derrick Henry, even though he doesn't technically fit that. McCaffrey's obviously up there. Eckler, right, even though he doesn't rush a whole lot. And then it starts to get a little slippery. Is Bijan going to get the volume? Gibbs, is he going to get enough volume? We know he's going to get targets. Right. And then you have some of the older guys like your Dalvins. Obviously, that's unlikely to happen. Are we going to see Joe Mixon? Is he going to get enough volume? But when I see that, I'm like, yeah, I'm not super worried about the injury. I'm more worried about, is he going to get enough volume? And now the change of offensive coordinator kind of throws another monkey wrench in that because you're like, oh, they're going to change the routes. He actually wants to run more, which is a good thing for Pollard. So, that's another thing that helps him.
Yeah, Tony Pollard's been a tough one for me to figure out. I'm not gonna lie, because I see the potential, you see the electricity, and you love it. You love the game, but for me, I look at him and I'm like, there's just a couple little red flags that maybe I'm over dramatizing, And it's, as a fantasy player, it's sometimes it's tough to realize that, but maybe I'm just dramatizing it a little bit more than it need to.
Yeah, I mean, you only got he's either your first or second round pick, so it's hard to lose your draft, but you can definitely lose it in the first or second round.
Yeah, hopefully not. Hopefully he makes a lot of people happy and he just proves me wrong. Yeah. I'd love to see him have a full season. Another guy that you mentioned, Jonathan Taylor, we talked about his ankle injury and how he missed some time last year. And you and I had a little discourse on this on Twitter. But I want to get your opinion on Jonathan Taylor's injury because you seemed a lot more concerned about his than you did about Tony Pollard's.
Yeah, Jeff Mueller, one of the PTs, and I had a little spat. I remember because he was like, "Oh no, he's fine by him," and then he ended up not doing well, and I was right, which happens sometimes. But for him, it was a combination between the team wasn't very good. His height, it was pretty much a high ankle. That's what we thought it was what it was. I don't think it was ever confirmed, but for what it is, I think it was a high ankle. And then he ended up having surgery in the off season, which isn't a concern right away, but it will be a concern in the future, scoping his ankle. But the thing that really concerns me overall about Jonathan Taylor, this is another crazy thing I did. I added all of the carries and touches or target receptions for every running back to when they started college. So I have a full chart. And then I added all the games missed. And there's a correlation.
Really?
So, yeah. There's only one player that has never missed a game due to injury in college or the NFL. And that's a running back. Najee Harris. The only one.
Really?
The only one. He's the only one. Zeke only missed, I want to say it was 6 games or 5 games. I mean, he had his suspensions and he had his, but from injury. And most of that was like in the past 2 years. But why I'm saying this is because Jonathan Taylor already has either the 15th or the 18th most active touches, active running back touches accumulated from college to NFL. And he's only been in there, 3 years?
Maybe
his fourth year.
Fourth year.
He's got a lot of volume. I mean, he was at Wisconsin, he was rushing over 300 times. There's a lot of volume. It doesn't directly correlate, but the fact that he doesn't catch the ball a whole lot, rushing carries is a higher risk than receiving. So, given the ground and pound, so he's at higher risk for that, as opposed to if he were to catch the ball more like a McCaffrey.
So, like if I had 300 carries is a whole lot different in the injury world than 250 carries and 50 catches. A whole lot different.
In my head, not only will you do better in fantasy if you had the 50 catches, but you'll also have lower risk. It may not be 1 year. It may be, it's going to eventually build. But yeah,
And real quick
Taylor,
on that. So is that because of the cuts? Is that because of like the cutting? Because you would think, you're going to get injured more like going through the hole or getting tackled. Is it because of that? Or, because you're mentioning getting in space with the catches. Is it the cutting?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more energy used. There's a lot more hitting. I mean, think about it. If someone's running a route, no one's can hit. I mean, they can hit them, but it's pretty much illegal. When you're running the ball, you can get hit at any time. I mean, they're trying to take you down from you're starting with the ball behind the line of scrimmage. When you're running a route, you don't get hit until you catch the ball, right? So there's a lot more times that you can get hit if you're rushing the ball, right? I mean, you're pretty much guaranteed to hit it at least once unless you happen to run for a touchdown. But, I mean, it could easily be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times before you get actually tackled. The odds of a guy catching a pass and getting hit 8 times, I mean, it'd be a weird play, right? I mean, it'd have to be a free play. So, that's probably in my head that makes the most sense.
That's crazy, man. Well, you talk about, the running back position, catching the rock. We got to go to my man, Breece Hall, man. It was tough to see him go down last year, bro, because he's one of those guys that had next, like the Bijans, the Saquons, and JTs. Like, I was expecting to have Breece in this combo this year, and we don't. But he's going to a team now that has a quarterback, Aaron Rodgers. And I actually, for what it's worth, I kind of like the setup with getting a quarterback that can throw the ball, because now it takes less pressure off of Breece Hall. He doesn't have to have 250, 300 carry season, and he can be involved in the passing game. We know Aaron Rodgers likes to use his running backs in space. How are you feeling about Breece Hall coming into week 1, man? Because he just went on PUP, somewhat of a concern, not really concerned. Like, where are you at with Breece?
So Breece Hall is one of those freaks like Adrian Peterson. So him, Saquon, and Adrian Peterson kind of fit that same athletic sports score, however you pronounce it. That they're just freaks. They're very, very athletic. And the good news for Breece is that he only had an ACL tear and a little bit of a meniscal tear. I have to look at my notes, but I think that's all he had.
AKA, it's not J.K. Dobbins' injury.
It's not J.K.'s and it's not Javonte's, which I will talk about probably in a sec. The good news is that, yes, they have an elite quarterback or formerly elite. We'll see what he can do this year.
Right.
And they don't have to depend on him. If they bring in somebody else like a Dalvin or something, obviously that causes a little bit of concern. But in terms of being ready for week one, I really don't have any concerns. I think there's a 70 to 90% chance, unless he has a setback in the next 6 weeks. Today, coincidentally, he happened to hit 23.1 miles an hour on a GPS running.
Ooh.
To give you context, the fastest player in the NFL last year tracked was Paris Campbell at 22 miles an hour.
Oh, he's ready.
So he already is faster than the fastest player tracked coming off of ACL. I'm assuming it's correct, but that's bananas, right? That's, yes, it's not cutting that straight line, but that's still, you're feeling damn good if you can run that. I mean, that's like a cheetah,
yeah.
So, and when you look at Breece's metrics, he was ridiculous. He had the second best receiving YPRR behind Derrick Henry, which is kind of weird, but he's a beast when he catches. His yards per attempt were crazy. He was elusive. Javonte had the most elusive rating, and Breece had the second. Kind of weird. They both throw their ACL, but his breakaway speed and breakaway percentage is really high. Like he's very elusive. He had very high, missed tackles per attempt. So not only is he a freak, but he's also healing appropriately. Everything goes according to plan. He could finish in the top 5. And
you think top 5?
ADP, yeah. I mean, yeah.
Dude, because
everything has to go perfect. Right? He can't have any setbacks. He can't have any setbacks. He has to get probably at least 315 to 320 touches unless he catches a ton of passes. We saw what Aaron Jones did as a pick out of UTEP or 5th round, 1 or 2. With Aaron. I mean, Aaron Jones is still a stud. Breece has higher pedigree than that and has better YPRR numbers than Jones. So, the cards are lining up and everything realistically could work out for him. Is he a risky pick? A little bit. You're praying everything goes right, but can I justify taking him as my RB1 in the right setup? I prefer my RB2. RB3 would be an embarrassment of riches, and you're playing in a 16 league or something. But, I could justify it, but it's risky. The problem is you're pretty much drafting him at his floor, but also maybe his ceiling.
Yes, I can see that. That was
if you miss him, you're not getting him. You take him in probably 2, or depending on the draft setup, 3. If you wait till 4 or 5, you're not getting him. So you kind of have to reach for him a little bit.
I would say that was probably my biggest concern with Breece, and I almost attributed it to, and I probably incorrectly did. I attributed it to my fear with Saquon. Right, I was the guy who was like, "Nah, Saquon came off the ACL. He's gonna be like AP. He's a dog." He was confident, right? Like when Saquon came back, he was talking a lot of the same things. I'll be ready for week 1. He played a majority of the season until he got hurt, but I wasn't concerned. The thing that happened with him was a different type of injury, right? Like he came back and hurt his ankle against Dallas. So am I wrong to be like, let me be a little hesitant on Breece? Or do you really think there's a world where we can see, I know you talk top 5, but is there a world where we can see Breece Hall looking like Breece Hall this season?
There is. I'd say out of there's probably 5 to 10 players in the NFL that you could have an ACL and come back and look like the same player in year 1, and he's one of them. I'd say Jamar Chase is probably up there. Like just the freaks, just like they do crazy stuff that we don't expect. He fits that mold. He just all the underlying the draft data looks good. Like the acceleration scores, like everything just fits. It's like if someone can do it, this is the mold that can do it.
Man, I love to hear that. I would love to see Breece Hall back to normal. Like I would absolutely love to see that, man. Because Breece Hall, he's one of them guys that I love watching. Like as a player, you saw that first game where he had a couple TDs. So let's go, Breece, man.
Once he got the full workload, he was like 19, 20, points per game. Like he was a beast.
Easily. Like phenomenal, dude. So Javonte Williams is kind of like that too. Not at the same tier, not at the same level as Breece, but he's one of those guys when you watch him play, you're like, dude, I just want to see you run the football, bro, because you're exciting to watch. Unfortunately, he tore his ACL too, man.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about Javonte. This is kind of like the last major one. Then I got just a couple quick hitters for you after that. But Javonte Williams, what are we looking at with him? Because there seems to be a lot more concern.
So there's a couple parts to the knee. Obviously, the ACL is torn, if that's what we're talking about. But there's the medial or inside part of the knee here. And here's the fibula we were talking about earlier. Then there's the lateral part. Most guys are going to either tear just the ACL, the meniscus, which is this blue thing, or the MCL, because most guys are getting tackled on the outside of their knee, the inside of the knee buckles, and then eventually you tear the MCL as well. The MCL is also a protector of the ACL. But J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, and Javonte Williams all got hit on the inside of their knee and tore the posterior lateral corner, which is this whole complex right here, in addition to their ACL. The only other guy that I know of that's confirmed is Carson Wentz when he has his. So, and remember, in my opinion, he never looked like the same after that.
Never.
Between that and then his back fractures. So the problem with Javonte's is that it's a bad version. This whole corner right here, what we call the PLC, is responsible for rotation of the leg, pivoting, that type of stuff. So it's a harder injury to come back from. And usually guys take closer to 15 months than 12. The 9 to 12, he's more of like the 12 to 15. And he's a very aggressive runner, very aggressive.
Well, you never mentioned number one in elusiveness, like that'll do it.
And I don't know if you know the story. I found it fascinating when I was doing a deep dive on his injury history. When he was coming out of high school, in his junior year, he had no offers, 0. And he's like, I want to go to college. The reason why? He was a linebacker.
Really? I didn't know Javonte Williams was a linebacker.
He was a linebacker. He was like, you should change to running back. He tore it up, got a full ride to UNC, and the rest is history. He split the backfield with Michael Carter, who, the Jets, and now he's obviously where he is. But he didn't have the carries that most of these guys do in Pop Warner and first freshman, whatever. He didn't start getting carries until his senior year of high school. And then he had, I think, 2 or 3 years of college. That was it. So, I mean, he doesn't have a lot of volume on his knee per se, but he's such an aggressive, big dude, aggressive guy, So, unfortunately for him, I would not be surprised if they put him on PUP or if they really slowly ramp him up. This is a hard injury. You saw when JK finally came back and looked good, he looked good. Yes. But it took time. And the reason why we heard is he had extra scar tissue develop in the knee, and they had to go in and clean it out. That's what happened. And once he came back from that, he was fine. But that was his holdup. That was his setback.
Yeah, because I'm excited about Javonte, man. Like, he's a guy that I really enjoy watching. And, what I've been preaching is like, hey, this guy ACL, like just from what I've read and what I've learned, and I'm sure there's not a lot to that, but I've always been preaching like, hey, Javonte may not look like the same Javonte until the second half of the season. And even then, it's probably going to be some kind of platoon for this year. Yep.
Yeah.
Are you buying that? Am I spitting the right thing out?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's realistic. Again, it would not surprise me at all to go on PUP at all. I think it's 6 games. I think it's officially 6 games. I think last year they made the transition from 4 to 6. So, and I think they took P. Ryan for a reason. They didn't draft a running back. I forgot who else is behind him, like Tony Jones and some other, guy that's not a lot of volume. So, I mean, I'm expecting P. Ryan to do some heavy lifting initially, and then eventually Javonte will join him. That's my suspicion.
All right. Well, I'm gonna trust you on that, Doc. I got a couple more names. Let's do some quick hitters, and then I'm gonna let you get out of here because I know you put a lot of hours into that draft, guys. So we got to get you out of here. I can talk to you. I can talk your ear off about injuries, about all sports. Cooper Kupp. How you feeling about him? Quick hitters.
Cooper Kupp could have came back last year if Stafford didn't have his season-ending injury.
So a lot of people are saying that number one, they're fading Cooper Kupp because of the injury. Is there any risk, or because I love Cooper Kupp, I got him as my number one player?
So there's always concern, but not concern. The only concern with him is Stafford. Okay. Like obviously by association. But if you map out what I call the adjusted points per game, what the hell does that mean? Remove the games they missed and remove the games in the points accumulated for under 50% of snaps. So, when they played over 50% of snaps, which really pretty much means they finished the majority of the game. If you do that for Cooper Kupp over the past 2 years, he was number one in points per game each of the past 2 years. He was 2 to 3 points higher than Justin Jefferson. It wasn't even close. Like in 21, he was 25.8 points per game. Think about that number. I mean, that's ridiculous. They were literally playing catch. Like, I think he had 190 something targets. Like, it was ridiculous. Like,
Doc, you're speaking my language.
You're not going to get that from. I mean, Jefferson is going to flirt with some nastiness, but I don't think he's going to get to that level of targets. He'll be close. Yeah. And Jamar isn't going to get that level of targets. I mean, he could easily do some crazy stuff. Tyreek doesn't run. He runs half his lot from the slot and half his from wide. So he's a little bit mixed. You have your sleepers like your Garrett Wilsons and some of the other, CD maybe. Yeah. And some of the other guys, Devontae, you can't always count out, but I mean, Cooper has to be in the consideration. I get the risk. I get it. But I love me some Cooper Kupp.
Me too, bro. I'm all in Cooper because I had Jefferson. I was playing it safe, and I'm like, you know what? Why don't I have Cooper Kupp? I changed Cooper Kupp. He's my number one player on the board, man.
Yeah, so. I could easily justify each of the three, and you wouldn't be wrong.
All right, love it. Love to hear it. Kyle Pitts. How are you feeling about Kyle Pitts coming back?
So initially, remember the MCL I was telling you about, this one on the inside? That's what he tore.
Yes.
But so MCLs, grade 1s and grade 2s, which is a partial tear, usually did not undergo surgery. He had to have had a grade 3 because he had season-ending surgery, as far as we know, on that. Now, if you have a grade 3, the meniscus actually attaches to the deep fibers of the MCL. So there's a chance he tore his meniscus too. If he had a bad enough MCL to tear it, I wouldn't be surprised if he had a meniscus. So
right, that's
more information than most people need to know. But in general, I'm not worried about him and his knee. I mean, he's a freak. He's like one of the other, some of the other athletic freaks.
Yeah.
But my biggest concern with him is he going to get enough volume to justify a top 3, a top 4, a top 5. We know they're going to. The target trees are really shallow. It's pretty much just him in London. But, like, is he going to get 8 to 12 targets a game? Maybe. I don't know.
It's going to be tough with Kyle Pitts. He's somebody I like. We all recognize the upside. I just want to make sure there was no injury risk with him, and it sounds like that won't be the case. So I'm
not super worried about it. I mean, he's had his fair share of stuff the past couple of years, but if you look at his overall injury history, he's been really healthy. Like, he hasn't had anything crazy. That was his biggest injury ever.
Clean bill of health and more targets for Kyle Pitts. We got to see it this year. We got to see the full
potential. I want to see it. I was all in on him last year, and I got burned.
Kyler Murray, another Kyler Murray, man. Obviously, we're not expecting him to run a whole lot coming off of his injury.
Yeah,
talk to me. Is he going to be ready week 1? Are we fading?
So I did a little bit of a dive yesterday, this morning. So Kyler's going to be about almost 8.5 months out, week 1, which is kind of early. Kyler is the type of mindset and mentality and just athlete that I would not put it past him that he's ready for week 1. If it's up to the team, they're putting him on PUP. I'm going to tell you that right now.
Okay.
But if it's up to him, he's playing week 1. I don't know which way this goes. I have concerns about dip in production in terms of rushing. I think the offensive line is going to be awful. I think this team is going to be awful. So, but when you look at Kyler's points per game since he started in the NFL, he's top 7 every year. A lot of it has to do with rushing, but he's still top 7. But if you take maybe 30 to 40% of that rushing away, I don't know, speculating, he becomes pretty normal pretty quickly. And he's not the biggest guy, right? He's like my size, a little bit bigger. So he's going to have to move to get out of the pocket. And I'm assuming every lineman's bigger than him, height-wise. So he kind of has to move to really. So, I have a lot of concerns. He may be sneaky in the second half of the year. I think he should be 100% by 24. I don't know who he's going to be playing for, but that's a separate discussion.
Right.
But I have concerns about Kyler, but he also wouldn't surprise me if he's ready for week 1. So, if you're drafting him, make sure you have someone else.
Yeah, a little bit of a gamble there, and QB 20, 25, somewhere in that range. You can gamble on Kyler a little bit if you have maybe another solid option, or if you're in a super flex league, you have a solid 2 options. I don't know about having them week 1 ready. So, all right, last 2 I got. I'm going to bundle them together because they're old-ass receivers who are always hurt. Odell Beckham, Michael Thomas. How are we feeling about these guys? Are they both fades? Are they buys? Because I feel like Odell's a buy right now, man.
Okay, so I've got some funny stories we're not going to talk about today about Odell. But I treat a lot of NFL guys. I do not know Odell personally. But I know people who know him, and he is a special dude. But unfortunately, his ACL tear was a partial tear of his previous ACL tear. And that's why he struggled, or relatively struggled, in the second half of the Rams season when they won the Super Bowl. He's on the wrong side of 30. I think he's 31 now, if I remember correctly, 30 or 31. He's coming off back-to-back ACL tears, same knee, and he hasn't had an elite statistical season since 2018 when Saquon was a rookie. That's a long time ago.
Yeah.
Right? Yes, Monken's going to expect to open up the offense. They're going to throw to him. They're going to throw to Bateman if he stays healthy. They're going to throw to Zay. They're going to throw to Andrews. Obviously, they'll give the ball to JK. So he might be alpha, but is he going to get 5 targets, 7 targets? His ADP is baked in. Maybe he surprises us, but I have no interest.
Man, I love Odell too. And I kind of feel like out of the 2, Odell and Mike Tom, Odell's the one I would take the chance on because you like wide receiver 6, cool. I'll take Odell, but Mike Tom,
I get the risk 100%.
His is way higher. He's like a wide receiver 4 right now, and he hasn't been able to stay on the field either.
So Michael Thomas, you remember his last healthy season?
Around that same time, Saquon was
it was 2019, yeah. That was Cooper Kupp-ish. Remember, we were like, no one's going to beat this, and then Cooper Kupp did it. But Michael Thomas was a beast. He was playing catch with Drew Brees. It was like only 2 on the field. But then he's had some crazy decisions and crazy injuries, all of them to his feet. Last year, he actually, this is kind of a gnarly injury. He dislocated this toe at this joint. So what happens is it literally doesn't stay in. It just pops out. Very painful.
What?
Yep. So that's what happened. They tried to rehab it, and that's just not rehabable. So that's why he ended his season. And then what initially derailed his season is he had a high ankle sprain, which we talked about earlier. He saw famous Dr. Anderson, and then he re-injured that, and he suffered a deltoid or medial ankle sprain, and that's what ended his season. But he needed surgery. He was supposed to have surgery in January, didn't have it, ended up getting evaluated by Saints team docs in July, and they're like, bro, you need surgery, and that's a 6-month rehab. That was the season.
Oh, wow.
That's what happened. From what we know.
Dude, I hope he gets back on the field too, man, because like you talked about, the talent's there, but
yeah,
you got to best availability your best ability is your availability. That's what they always say, man.
I got one thing that a little birdie told me.
Okay.
And that is probably going to mess up is going to irritate a lot of people and is going to surprise some other people. But I feel like it's necessary to discuss. And his name rhymes with Lamar Jackson.
What?
Yeah. So Lamar had a pretty significant knee injury. He had a PCL, which is the other ligament in the knee besides the ACL. And it is responsible for preventing your knee from going backwards. So what happens when you sprain your PCL is you hyperflex. So what happens is this sags, right? So your knee basically sags. So if this was sprained, this bone would be like down here. So it's sagging.
Oh, wow.
So you basically do it. You think of like bending your knee and then think of driving into the ground. That's pretty much how you did it. You do it. So the problem is this was a grade 2/3. Meaning,
and Doc, this is the injury from last year, right? The one that
correct.
He was supposedly like not playing because he was rebelling against the team, right?
Yeah, but no, this was a legit injury. This was legit. So think of a piece of rope. Rip that rope into about 50 to 75% of the rope is torn. So you have like 30%. Now that's holding your knee together. Now I'm going to further complicate it. You're sitting on a bar stool. That's like your knee. I'm going to loosen 3 of the legs, and I want you to sit comfortably on that bar stool. You're going to be like,
yeah.
That's the PCL when it's severely sprained.
So he had all offseason to recover from this and get surgery or everything on it. The team signed him. They gave him obviously the largest contract in NFL history. Is there should we have some kind of concern about his mobility, running ability coming up this season then?
You should. And here's why. I'm going to tell you one short thing, and I'm going to leave it at that. When he was rehabbing with the Ravens, while he was trying to get back, there are certain exercises that you do to strengthen the lower half and improve the tightness, or think of the PCL as a elastic band, and it's overstretched, so it's sagging. So basically, what you want to do is you kind of want to retighten it and bring it back together, right?
Right.
Think of those exercises as promoting that. Now do the opposite, and think of exercises that are making that PCL stretch harder. That's what the Ravens staff was doing.
Oh my gosh. I feel like they had so many injuries over the last couple of years. Like they've always been talked about as one of the worst staffs. Like players tend to get injured. JK, Gus, obviously Lamar now, Rashad Bateman.
Twice. Remember, Rashad had 2. Rashad had 2 and Lamar had 2. Remember he had that weird ankle thing 2 years ago? Like what the hell happened with that? So all I'm saying is I'll give you one more comment about Lamar. You know those people, you ever met someone who's like, oh, that's going to heal. Don't worry about it.
That's me.
That's Lamar.
Oh, so he's just ignoring it, putting it off. He'll be fine.
I think it's a family thing. I think it's like the beliefs is like, if it's going to heal, God is going to heal.
Yo, dropping. I was not expecting that. But,
he's a freak. So could he be good? Yes. But with the cost you have to charge, you have to pay for him. That gives me enough pause to be like, I'll take Herbert, who I love this year. I will take T-Law, who I also love this year. I mean, you can't go wrong with Mahomes or Burrow or Allen, or Hurts. So it's like, unless you're adamant about getting Lamar, like, Nah, I'm okay.
That's
I'll even
crazy.
take Geno.
I'm over here thinking like clean bill of health, like thinking, oh, he's good to go.
Well, and that most people are, you know, and
yeah.
he should be, but I just got a feeling he's not. I'll just leave it at that.
All right. Well, you heard it here first, my man. Doc, I appreciate you, man, and kept you for longer than I thought I was going to, but I appreciate your insight, man. And like I said, I could talk about this shit all day. I love hearing it, man. And it sounds like people need to be tapped in with you, man. Let them know where to find you at.
So I'm pretty good about answering messages and DMs and everything on the my personal Twitter, Dr. Jesse Morse. And then the draft guide you can get. We have a cool deal with Sleeper, where I think we're the only one to do this, but Sleeper now has like pick'ems and stuff like that. If you deposit, I think it's at least $20. I'm not sure how much it is, but I think it's at least 20. And use the code TFD, then we'll email you the draft guide as for free. But if you want to pay for it, it's $29.99 on the fantasydoctors.com, or during the season. I actually do, and I think you've probably seen this before. Every week, say week one, whatever, after week one's done, I count up all the injuries and I tell you what all the injuries are, and then I tell you, hey, this guy's 50% chance of playing on Sunday, and it changes by the day. So I do that. It's behind the paywall this year. You can kind of put them together so that you kind of get everything throughout the year. So that's part of the packages or whatever, but. There'll be plenty of content for free, but if you want the high level stuff, that's where you find it.
I'm definitely following. Definitely will be tapped in, my man. Doc, Jesse Morse, appreciate the time. Thank you very much. You guys make sure to go get that draft guide. I know I got my draft guide. Y'all go get that draft guide. That's the important one, man, with the injuries. Shout out to you. I appreciate your time, my man.
Appreciate it. Good to see you, player.
Yes, sir. That does it for the episode. Make sure you guys tap in with the Justin Henry Show on a daily basis, getting you exclusive content like this. I'll see you on the next one. Peace out.